Hey guys, Tyler Ansman here with Tyler Ansman Performance. So while we typically talk about velocity and some of those other kind of topics on this channel, today we're going to talk about command training. All right. So I think this gets a lot of attention from the old school crowd in terms of like, oh, but was it a strike? But there's a lot more to command than just a pitch being in the strike zone or not. All right. So we're going to talk about how we train command to improve it, and so that our pitchers can have the maximum success possible on the mound. All right, so what is command based on when it comes to pitching, right? So kind of some really basic stuff to start with. So movement quality, strength, power, mobility are kind of like a couple of really key pieces. So we want to make sure that our pitchers move well, right? They're powerful, they have good velocity, so they're not afraid of being in the zone. And then we also have, they can maintain their health throughout the season, right? So if we have pain and injuries, that adds a whole other layer of complexity to this that we're not even going to get into today. But guys being healthy and throwing hard and moving well are super important pieces of the puzzle to start off with. The next piece that's really big is proprioception. So just kind of understanding where your body is in space is a really important piece to this, right? Because we know from Bernstein's research way back in the day that no two movements, even if they're the same and you're super skilled in what you do, are exactly the same, right? So while a repeatable delivery may look somewhat the same pitch to pitch, really every pitch is a snowflake, right? It's a little bit different than the one before it. So how we make those kind of micro adjustments from pitch to pitch and within the delivery are really important. So proprioception is a major piece to this. All right, so let's kind of get into how do we create an adaptation in general, and then we can apply this specifically to command training. So in general, we need to measure whatever we're doing in order to kind of maximize the adaptation we're going for. And so when it comes to command training, we need to track what we're doing. It's kind of one of the most important pieces. And so this can be really simple in the beginning and just in terms of balls and strikes, right, when we're going from there. We can make it more or less difficult than the specific kind of game quality, right? So just throwing bullpens from 60 feet, 6 inches with a regular baseball to a catcher or command trainer over and over and over again is only going to do so much. At some point, we either need to up or kind of diminish the difficulty level there. So either guys can kind of gain some confidence and get some success under their belt, and we can meet them where they're at, or we need to make it more difficult than it currently is so guys can up their game from where they are. All right, the next piece is intensity. All right, so we have to set up an intensity where it's actually going to transfer. Throwing 50% effort fastballs is not going to do it. So we're going to set basically kind of minimum intensity baselines. So this could be done with either RPE or my preference would be a radar gun. And so generally for us, we're going to set the minimum somewhere around 85% of maximal velocity or an RPE of about 7. Those are going to be the bare minimums. And so we'll give guys kind of specific numbers to stick with that day, and they need to hit these in order for that pitch to count towards what we're tracking. All right. Then we get into whether we randomize or block our training. All right. So this can be when we're kind of mixing up variables here. So when we're talking about getting into our command training, how are we eliciting this adaptation? Are we changing the distance that guys are throwing from, right? So we can make it more or less challenging as we go, or progress it within a session. Are we adding in different ball weights or ball sizes? All right, and then when it comes to randomized or block practice, basically if let's say we're doing different ball weights, right, within a training session, and we're doing a 5 ounce, a 6 ounce, and a 4 ounce. If we were doing block style, right, you're gonna get 15 pitches. We would do 5 at 5 ounce right in a row, 5 at 6 ounce right in a row, 5 at 4 ounce right in a row. That'd be block. If we're doing it random, you might get a 5 ounce. And then you might get a 4 ounce, and you might get 2 6 ounces, then you might get a 4 ounce again. And it would be just kind of like a partner tossing it to you, or you picking it blindly out of a bucket and then throwing it. And that's going to kind of one, in the beginning, random practice is going to lead to a lower level of success. All right, but over the long term, it's going to show better transfer and a higher level of success as we go. But if we over randomize it, and this is an important thing, in the beginning, either we're going to kill somebody's confidence or we're not going to get the adaptation we're after because we just made training way too difficult. We have not got to that kind of like reaching just beyond their current ability stage. We're way overreach where they can't possibly succeed and they're not going to get the adaptation that we're after. So that's kind of an important thing to talk about. Next piece of the puzzle, frequency. How often are we doing this? So this kind of depends on what stage of the in-season, off-season, preseason period we're in. what this looks like and what the other goals of the training cycle or week or day or whatever are. And so that kind of determines how often we're going to do this. But kind of bare minimum, if command is a goal, we need to do this once a week. All right, bare minimum, ideally probably twice, and we can just up or subtract the intensity as we go to kind of make that work in terms of recovery. All right. Then we talk about specificity. So this is where we get into, are we throwing a 5-ounce ball from a mound to a catcher with a hitter in the box, in game competition. So cleats on dirt mound, right? It's the most specific we can get. From there, anything less than that is less specific. All right, so we can change the specificity, and that can be beneficial as we kind of go through the off season. As we get closer to the season, in order to see that transfer, we need to get more and more specific with what we're doing. So what are some variables that we can change, right? We can change ball weight and size, like we talked about, right? So ball is a little bit bigger, a little bit smaller, a little bit heavier, a little bit lighter. Those are all things we can adjust to make training more challenging. We can change the drill types. This is where we get into kind of more general or more specific. Are we doing a shuffle throw for command? Are we doing a drop step for command? Right? Are we doing a rocker for command, or are we pitching from the mound? Right? So we could change that. Do we have a hitter standing in? Right? We can make it more challenging and more specific by having a hitter stand in. Are we throwing to a catcher? Are we throwing to a command trainer or a net? This may be a matter of kind of what you have available to you, but it's going to be more specific if we have a catcher there. Then we can add kind of game-like scenarios, right? There can be noise, there can be heckling, there can be all these things that can make it more game-like and more challenging than it will be in just kind of your normal training environment. And then we could play with the distance as well. So closer or farther away, right? Obviously closer is going to be a little bit easier, farther is going to be a little bit more difficult, and we can kind of play with that distance as we go, right? So most important things here, we want to measure what we're doing. We want to have minimum intensity requirements set, all right? And we want to gradually increase the difficulty as we go. So for some guys who have really problematic command, we're going to start with that difficulty less than what it is throwing from the mound to a strike zone. So we're going to make it easier on them so they can get some success under their belt and start getting a little bit more confident as we kind of work to those longer distances, okay? The intensity requirements, right? So we want to set a minimum there, all right? If we're throwing it too easy, not going to transfer on, we're not going to really get anything out of it because we've changed the movement to the point where it's not really the same thing, all right? Random versus block practice. Block is fine at some points, but we do want to randomize this a little bit more as we go to kind of see that better transfer and up that challenge. All right, frequency, bare minimum once a week. All right, we can go more frequently if we play with the intensity a little bit than we do depending on what the other goals are. All right, and then specificity. The more specific, the more likely we are to get transfer, and the more specific we need to be kind of closer to the season, the less specific we need to be farther away from the season, just kind of as general rules of thumb. So these are kind of the basic principles behind command training and kind of how we set this up. Thanks for watching. If you have questions, feel free to drop them in the comments or shoot us an email. If you got something out of this video, please subscribe and share, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.